And it is here. We are ready to recap the month of April. I am meteorologist Joe Martucci. Thanks for watching the monthly weather roundup. Join with me, New Jersey State Climatologist Dr. Dave Robinson. Happy birthday month to us.
Yes, it is. It is. Let's leave it at that.
Okay. Well, we can say it was May 13th at least. How about
There
that? May 13th
you
coming up soon here. And I was talking to one of the other shows I did, which you were on, titled Flooding Talk, or going to be on, I should say. We were talking about how the weather is so different in Memorial Days. And I was saying, our birthdays have had a wide variety of weather as well. We had the one year, I think it was 2016, where it like poured all day long. Do you remember that one? Like it rained over 2 inches. It was cold. We've had 60 and sunny. I remember that. That was 2020. And I can't really remember last year. What was it like last year on our birthday? Is it bad? Can't remember.
I've had so many of them. I can't remember one from
Okay.
the other.
What do you have a favorite birthday weather memory?
No, actually, I don't. Although I remember one time I took a break where I live and took a bike ride in the middle of the day on my birthday during a work week, and that's like horrors. I'm not sitting behind the desk or
Right.
anything like that. And I remember it was a gorgeous day. But no, I don't. I really don't have any vivid memories of the weather on my birthday.
All right. Well, we'll hope that this one for all the May 13thers out there have a beautiful day out in New Jersey. But this is not a forecast show. This is a look back show here. So let's kick it off. And I think we just have to kick it off with the Jones Road fire, the forest fire that was in Ocean County. 15,300 acres is the last I saw, just outside of the top 10 for the largest in state's history. This one, was, I would say, kind of the one that we feared for a while, in the sense that we've been in drought for so many months, and we said, drought, pine barrens, not a good mix. And it never really happened in the fall, didn't happen during the winter. Now we have it in the spring, where, ironically, drought's been improving. We'll talk about that. But I don't know, just kind of what's your reaction to this? What do you think? What does it say about our weather over the past couple of weeks and months?
I really thought we had dodged a big bullet last fall when we were bone dry and we didn't have major fire concerns. And I thought this might have been the end of our good luck string. When I saw the way that fire was expanding on the evening of the 22nd, it was terrifying. The evacuations that were taking place, the numerous structures that were threatened. I really wondered if this was going to turn into a real headline event. Headlines it did have, but through the efforts of incredible firefighters and other first responders, there were no serious injuries, no deaths. Yes, there was the loss of a business, and that's a miserable situation for that company. But oh my goodness, it could have been so much worse. And maybe it awakened people to the threat of these fires in the pinelands. We've seen a lot in recent years, but they've mostly been in the middle of the pinelands, which are very sparsely populated. This one was right on the eastern fringe, so very quickly became a concern for thousands of people living and traveling, as I know you were,
Yeah.
through that region. So we really, again, dodged that bullet for the most part. But I'd say it's a wake-up call, but waking up just to being prepared for such a thing in the future, because they try to do controlled burns to keep the fuel source minimized on the forest floor, but you can't do controlled burns everywhere. And you can't do them near real close to populated areas for fear of them getting out of control. So there's only so much can be done for people living in and near the pinelands to avoid this. So I guess a wake-up call just to be prepared for things like this that could happen.
Yeah, and Rolling Stone notably did a really long article about how the New Jersey Pine Barrens, are such a potentially dangerous place for wildfires back in 2019, I believe. I have an article out in Shore Local magazine about the reasons why the pinelands are so unique in terms of forest spread here. But how can we? Can we associate this with drought? I mean, or are we, is this, I mean, I know it was a human that caused this, and 85% of forest fires are caused by humans, or is this just the pinelands being the pinelands?
It definitely is the pinelands being the pinelands. They would not be pinelands were it not for fire. They would succeed. A successional cycle is them becoming oak forests. But fire has been so prevalent in there throughout millennia that they sustain themselves through fire. So in that sense, it's not unusual. In terms of timing, if you look at those top 10 or 15 fires in the Pinelands historically, almost all, not all, but most have been in April. It is fire season there when things haven't greened up completely yet and become rich with moisture. The atmosphere is often dry. We can go days without rain. Winds tend to blow pretty strong in the spring. So, and it's warming up some too. And all that debris on the forest floor from last fall and over the winter is sitting there. So, this is prime time for fire until you get leaves on the deciduous trees down there, the grasses green up, and the air becomes a little more humid during the summer.
Right.
And that's weather. That's essentially weather. And it hadn't rained for 10 days prior to that fire breaking out. As we'll talk about, early
Yeah.
April was wet, but it hadn't rained since the 12th, and this was the 22nd. And that's all it takes in the Pinelands and in the spring. 10 days, no rain, low humidity, strong sunlight, boom, you've got a fire danger. But it wasn't red flag warning day from the Weather Service. It was breezy to light windy, 20, 30 mile an hour gusts, but it wasn't real windy. Humidities were low, but they weren't super low. It hadn't rained in 10 days, but it hadn't been 20 days. So, it wasn't the best case scenario for a fire to explode like this, yet it still did.
Yeah. And that, oh, God.
Well, I was just finish with climate change. That's got me wondering, and I want to talk to forest officials. The dry weather we had last fall, and even in January, the third driest on record, did that contribute somewhat? Were the trees themselves really water starved more than usual that helped to spread this fire? That would be my question to the fire officials, because rainfall was about normal in February, March, and of course, the first half of April. We almost had an April's worth of rain in the first 12 days of the month. So I don't know how much last year's drought really played into this.
Yeah.
Uh, I'd say it's more a weather situation and then just the ecologic circumstances of the pinelands.
And we've talked about this too. It's not always about how much rain falls, but how often it falls too. It doesn't, in the Pinelands doesn't have a long memory of rain, I guess you could say, right?
Yeah.
It could, I mean, the adage goes in the Forest Fire Service, it could pour overnight and by noon you have a wildfire because of that sandy soil. And, you did mention I was traveling, or trying to travel on the Parkway that Tuesday. I was down in Cape May going up to Monmouth County. And first of all, you could see the smoke for like 20 miles before. This was around exit 69, 74. You're in Galloway, exit 48. You can see that cloud in the distance. And then we had to go around on County Route 539, one lane on each side. Thankfully for me, going north, it was moving. But south, one lane, headlights for like 10 miles because of all the people trying to go south. It was after rush hour. People are getting out of Newark and, New York and stuff. Just immensely catastrophic in terms of reducing the economic flow and people just getting home. And even Route 9, was closed for a period of time also. And then the next day, like this is something like, just kind of sticks with you, like kind of like when New York City was orange that one day 2 years ago. But I'm driving on the Parkway the next day and you're in the fire area. You can drive on the Parkway, but you just see this smoldering and flames just on the side of the road. Like it's not like it's jumping the park or anything extreme, but it's just there. Like the fire's just there. And it was a light wind day that next day on that Wednesday, and that was good. But I just want to echo your statements. I mean, the Forest Fire Service, doing a really tremendous job. We know the Pinelands are right next to populated areas. No loss of life, no injuries that I'm aware of, at least. I mean, hats off to them for really, jumping on this. Anything else you want to add before we go to the next topic?
Well, no, I mean, we're never out of the woods for long. We continue to be dry. Let's hope that we get some early May rain. That and the green up should hopefully end the worst of this season. But again, the other thing to remember, as I alluded to quickly, it just takes a couple of weeks of dry weather. Even in the middle of the summer, you can have a fire danger, both in the Pinelands and, of course, look to North Jersey with the deciduous forest up there as well, which have seen some notable fires in recent years.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we're going to move on from the forest fires here. We got about 3.5 minutes. We're going to get into our temperatures for the month of April. Our winds. I'm sorry. Let's get into the winds because, this kind of goes with the wildfires. There was some breeze on that Tuesday. The Wednesday was fairly quiet, but people keep telling me, Joe, it's been so windy this year. Mm-hmm. Do we have any numbers it was the windiest winter since 2010, 2011. Anything you got? Because I feel like you and I both get this a lot about how windy it's been.
I've not really delved into it. I mean, you could look at average wind speeds, which I think you look at. I often look at the number of days that our weather network of 69 stations have a station or more gust over 40 miles an hour. And there were 12 of those in April, and there were a similar number in March. And to me, that constitutes a very windy period. Now, our stations have grown in number, so we can't look historically back very far to see how unusual that is. But even myself, who doesn't really like anecdotal climatology in a way, there's just no other. And I just saw something that in an article yesterday, I guess it was, that talked about how March was the windiest March in years across the United States.
That was a Washington Post article, wasn't it?
Yeah, I didn't want, yes, I can give.
You can give credit. Yeah, sure. We know, we both know Jason Sabino, who founded Capital Weather Gang, friend of ours. Maybe we'll have to get him on the show one day. But yeah, we can give him a shout out. Sure.
Yeah. So it was a Post article, and actually the windiest areas they said was up in Michigan for whatever reason. And we were in an unusual windy, but further to the west, it was even more unusually windy. So there were just a lot of weather systems coming across the country. And at this time of the year, with thermal contrast between the cold north and the very mild south, you can kick off a lot of wind. And this year, surely, not just in April, but in earlier months, it has been a windy year. Take our word for it.
Yes, just take our word for it. But you know what? Our hair still looks good. That's the important part.
The important part is we still have it.
That's very important. Yes. When I become your age in 5 years, I still want to have the same amount of hair as I do.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right. We're gonna take a break here. We'll come back to you on the other side with our April monthly weather roundup. Thanks to the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, your flood insurance bills are lower and your streets safer from the reality of flooding. Since beginning in 2013, we build more resilient shoreline communities. Our member towns develop and share in best practices that anticipate future concerns and create flooding solutions. From our town-specific free web app for flooding information to our weekly Tidal Flooding Talk show, we focus on flooding 24/7. Visit www.njcoastalcoalition.com for more. Welcome back, everybody, to our monthly weather roundup here. Thanks for sticking with us. You can find new episodes around the start of the new month, recapping the month that was. And this time we're talking about April. April, of course, is a spring month, and it's a battle between the two seasons, winter and summer. But I'll tell you what, it felt like winter was really winning this tug of war that second week of April, from about April 8th to the 12th. I believe they were all below average. I'm going to highlight April 12th because that day was just cold. I mean, this wasn't in New Jersey, but I was in New York City. I'm seeing an event in Central Park, and I had a jacket, a scarf, and gloves. And I was like, you know what? I could use some like Under Armour on my pants here because it was cold. Like, cold, like during the day. High temperatures at ACY Airport going up to 43. That broke a daily record cold maximum. It's hard to, I have to think about that one. Basically, the high temperature was 43. That hasn't happened before in record. Some other places broke those daily records too. And it was raining. It was just a nasty day. But that whole stretch, it was chilly. It was a cold stretch. You got any specifics on that for us?
No, I mean, I look at the month, and that'll be the theme of my write-up for the month, is having a split personality,
Okay. I
both in
like that.
terms of temperature, but even more so in terms of precipitation and the way it was distributed. You looked at the real cold on the 12th, and I remember that well. But a couple mornings earlier, we had quite a cold morning on the what was it, the 9th.
Nice.
Morning of the 9th, High Point Monument got down to 20, and that was the coldest temperature for the month in the state. But of our 69 weather network stations, 63 were at or below freezing that morning. So
Huh.
essentially, the growing season hadn't started,
Yeah.
except right at the coast. The warmest spot that morning was West Cape May at
Yeah.
35 degrees.
Balmy.
Yeah, so that was a real, yeah, that was a wake-up call that week. It was winter didn't want to go away, and we also on the 12th had 6 inches of snow at High Point Monument and a couple of inches in the northwest Jersey counties. So yeah, that was winter's last gasp, I guess you could say, because by the time we got to the 19th, it got up over 80 degrees at 59 of our stations.
What a difference a week made.
Well, a weekly turnaround. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 That's April, like you said. That's April.
Yeah. No, totally. Just looking at the month as a whole, though, we did end up above the average.
About a degree, it looks
Yeah.
like when
Okay.
the numbers come in. Yeah, which is amazing when you look at where we were on the 15th of the month. Early month was a degree or two below normal. The later month was 2 to 3 degrees above normal. So just eked out on the positive side.
Yeah. And when we look at the shore versus inland areas, was there a big difference? Not so much in terms of what was that average temperature, but the anomaly or the difference.
Yeah, it was a smaller anomaly along the coast, which is not unusual
Yeah.
for the spring season. They don't get the real warm days, but they didn't get below freezing at night.
Yeah.
So some areas along the coast had their last freeze in March. And when you look inland, there were places with freezes well into later part of April. And and May 1st freeze up in Walpack, up in a valley of northwest Jersey. So at least one station is going to have a May freeze.
They freeze. Okay. Yeah. Wallpack, the ice box of New Jersey, right? Up
It,
there.
it, it is on those calm, clear nights. It's
Yeah.
either there or on windy, cold front nights. It's High Point Monument. It's
Right.
one or the other.
Well, it just shows, New Jersey, we've said it a bunch of times, small state, but diverse with our climate, even though the climate classifications all pretty much the same, but those day-to-day weather, pattern or day-to-day temperatures can vary. I just want to talk about the shore a little bit because sometimes I feel like some of these shore stations cheat a little bit. And what I mean by that is I'm thinking back to April 30th. We're recording this on the 1st, so this was just yesterday. Atlantic City got up to 80 degrees, but then it went right back down to 60 and just stayed there for the rest of the day. But the high's still 80 degrees. It kind of fudges the numbers a little bit. Like, was it really 80? Was it really an 80-degree day? You can make the argument it wasn't, right?
Oh no,
Sometimes.
it's remarkable. But then you have days when the difference between the high and the low might be 10 degrees at a coastal station. Then you go up to that Walpack station in Northwest Jersey, and it's a 50-degree difference between the high and the low.
Yeah.
It's that this what we call diurnal temperature range can be much more pronounced inland. When along the coast, it will just hold tight. Although in that case, the winds didn't come off onshore until maybe late morning.
Yeah.
Oftentimes you'll see the coastal communities, even in the summer, they'll hit their high for the day at 11 in the morning or noon, and
Right.
then it goes down for the afternoon. Or the other day I looked at one of our stations, it didn't get its high temperature until about 7 or 8 in the evening when the onshore winds slackened and some offshore winds allowed it to warm up. So
Right.
fascinating
Yeah.
uh, to look at the ups and downs, sometimes in 10 minutes, up and down,
Yeah.
with and multiple times in afternoons
Yeah.
sometimes.
I
Goes.
mean, look, how many, and we talked about this in Tidal Flooding Talk, right? How many times have you been on the beach and you're literally feeling the wind fight each other? Like it's a cold breeze for 10 seconds and then it's a warm breeze or there's no breeze, and it's fine. It's that battle. And then I think you were saying too, right? And this is so true. Like the beach is cold, but you go over the dune and then
Yeah.
it's hot again. Like we, have you got? I don't know. I don't know if I'm pitching you an idea. If you've done this, have you ever done like a micro net of a barrier island town and just see that difference between literally the beach and the main road?
No, we've never put a series of what we call thermistors, thermometers,
Yeah.
to look at that perpendicular to the coast, but it would be quite interesting.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Let's touch on like the frost and freezes. You said that earlier here. I mean, it's May 1st. I would tend to think based on the weather forecast, I'm the weather guy, you're the climate guy, that we're going to be frost and freeze free, at least for the southern half of the state. I mean, the shores, they've been good for a while. Northwest Jersey though, just kind of take us through like when that last frost or freezes in let's start from the coast and then take us to the northwest corner of the state on average.
On average, you're talking late March, first week of April near the coast. And that can even go up the Delaware Bay and then some of the urban areas as well. That won't cool off at night. And then for a bulk of the state, you're talking about around the 20th of April, plus or minus a week for their last freeze of the season. But then you can get these oddities, and it includes the valleys of Northwest Jersey, but it can also include some of the deep recesses of the Pinelands, our Berkeley Township
Yeah.
station, our new Woodland Township station. And those areas, it gets back to our fire talk. They dry out so much, and those sandy soils also get rid of the daytime heat so efficiently that you can get some really cold temperatures at weather stations in the Pinelands. And even worse, if you get into the cranberry bogs,
Yeah.
water without them being filled with water,
Right.
those are man-made depressions, and the cold air can pool in there, and you can have a frost. Just I've heard rumor there have been some July frosts there. There's certainly been some early June and late August frosts,
Yeah.
but that's real special
Yeah.
in
Very,
terms.
very localized at that point.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
low.
All right. All right. We got about 4 minutes left here. I did want to end with drought. Again, we're recording this on May 1st. We saw a very slight increase in our what we call D2 or severe drought. There's 4 stages of drought. very small increase. I think about 9% of the states in that. But over the month of April, we did see improvement with our drought, especially in the first half of the month. To now, where I'm just calling it the belt of New Jersey, that real center part of the state, Monmouth, Mercer, are drought free. But you go south and you go north, and those conditions deteriorate. I think I've said this every month. You have a role into determining this from the United States Drought Monitor. What have you been seeing, and any thoughts on where we go into May?
Yeah. Well, if we don't get any rain out of what's supposedly going to be an early May wet period, but if that fails to produce, we're going to go back into abnormally dry conditions in the central part of the state. It's already knocking on the door because we haven't had rain over 2 weeks. And this time of the year, things can change quickly. So we've held status quo the last couple of weeks. The northwest part of the state keeps missing out on the heaviest precip. Meanwhile, the far south, the groundwater from last fall's drought, even last summer's dry conditions, it's just not perking up. And that's keeping stream flows down too. So the southern part of the state's in D1, a little D2, because of groundwater lack of recharge, not so much that they've been short on the precip. Meanwhile, in the northwest part of the state, it's a shortness of precip. The groundwater there is not as plentiful in the bedrock areas of northwest Jersey. So they're both on the dry side, but for kind of different reasons.
Yeah. And I should say too, it looks like you're buying into the Cape May bubble here, because I do notice that far southern Cape May County is out of drought.
Yeah, far south has done well, and when you look at the April weather wrap up that I'll be posting on the State Climate website, we're gonna have a snow.
Oh yeah, snow.
Right.
Geez, let's talk. We got another minute and a half. We can talk snow
Yeah.
real quick.
And I just within 2 hours ago looked at the second draft of the map we're trying to pull together for annual snowfall, and you'll see a little Cape May bubble there at the southern end with one station with 20 inches of snow this winter down in Cape May. And you're going to see the southern quarter of the state and then the northern quarter of the state with most snow. The South did not win out. High Point ended up with 50 inches for the winter.
Mm,
Lower elevations in the north came in around 2 feet for the winter, 25, 30 inches tops for the most part. Central, northeastern areas, down towards Philadelphia came in more in the 15-inch range, give or take. Then you got a little bit lower in some parts of the South until it perked up again.
right.
As you
Yeah.
got to AC and over to Cumberland County South, where it was more in the 15 to 20-inch range. So below average for most of the state, but average to slightly above average in the Cape May bubble, above
Yeah.
average.
Right. Okay. Well,
So
there you go, Cape May snow lovers. You got your winter.
you got your winter.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to wrap it up for this month's, or I should say April's monthly weather roundup. We appreciate Dr. Robinson joining us every month. Happy birthday to you. I hope your May 13th goes well.
As well as you.
No, thank you very much. And where can we follow, the latest current conditions for the state of New Jersey and climate info?
njweather.org for the latest conditions to let you look at those sea breeze fronts and such as we get into early summer.
Yep.
And then njclimate.org if you want to look further in the past, or you want to, for instance, look back to all the snow events we had this past winter.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for that. Thank you, everybody, for watching the monthly weather roundup. We will be back with you around the turn of May into June, talking about the month that was.